Hi, everyone. I will try and keep it short because I think we want to have a lot of Q&A, as well around specific questions. So as Satish mentioned, what may seem like a fairly structured life for me, grew up in Bangalore, went to the US for my undergrad, worked, went back to business school, worked again, then came back to India at some point. What I can tell you categorically is some of the major life-altering decisions that I have made in my life the gut has essentially won over any sort of analysis that I could have done. To start with, my move to India, I spent 18 plus years, in the US, and no amount of financial analysis would have told me that, okay, it's the right time, move to India, and you're going to be better off. But I also knew that I probably won't be worse off. And starting in 2002, the seed was sown in my mind that I need to move back to India at some point, or I'd like to move back to India at some point. And when the right time came, it was literally a trigger that I pulled, and I said, okay, we're going to move. Was it driven by something? No. It was just something that triggered in my head. And then after I moved to India, more importantly, the decision to actually quit my last corporate job, with Cisco to start Treetle, that was even more driven by gut, because again, no amount of analysis, financial analysis, would have pointed me in the direction of quit now and start your own company. I just talked to my wife about it, took a couple of months of convincing, and when she realized that this is something that really, really, really made me happy, she was fully on board. And the decision was literally, just taken that, okay, I'm going to quit, I'm going to do this thing. Really, you have to think about what's the worst that can happen. Especially, I'm assuming a lot of the folks in this room are tech professionals. If you think about it, there is a significant dearth of tech talent, good tech talent in India. So if you decide to go to a startup or start your own company and it doesn't, work out, you will easily get absorbed, back into another startup, another mid-sized company, another large company, because people are now starting to realize, much like the Silicon Valley mindset, that if you have startup experience, you will do well in a company. I don't know if you heard Naveen speak earlier today, and he said, look, if you're an ex-entrepreneur, you almost certainly get hired by us because we know you'll succeed here, which is actually very true. What I'll tell you is there is, I keep hearing that the quality of startups in India isn't still up to snuff. And I think a majority of the people in this room can tilt that significantly in favor of there being good quality startups, in India. We're improving, and there are more people taking, jobs in startups or starting up their own companies. But the fear of the unknown, always wins out. And you've really got to get over that. When people call me and say, hey, Pankaj, how's your move to India, move back to India been? So I ask, what are your question marks? What are you concerned about? And they say, well, I don't know, school for my kids, traffic, pollution, this, that. I said, you know what, stop it. You're not ready to move back to India, because you have to move beyond those things and feel it in your gut that, okay, I want to move to India, so let me think about, some of the higher level things as opposed to traffic and pollution. Similarly, the move from a large company into a startup or starting your own company has to be based on similar things. You can't think about, well, my batchmate is doing this, so if I move to a startup, then I'm not going to be able to get the same salary as my batchmate. And unfortunately, I will tell you, I spend a lot of time talking to people, and it's a cultural thing, I think, amongst us, where we compare ourselves a lot more to what our batchmates or our neighbor is actually doing, which is very, very detrimental. Like Anand said, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Most people don't care what you're doing. So who are you hurting by comparing yourself to somebody else? You're hurting yourself. So think about that. Try to believe in your gut. Try to have the self-confidence that, look, if I actually go out and do something on my own, It's something that I can talk about later, even if I failed. In the West, if you fail, for the last 10, 15, 20 years, if you failed, it's actually looked as a positive. Because if you go for a job interview and you say, well, I started this company, it folded after 18 months, they're not going to kick you out of the room. What they will ask you is, okay, what did you learn from that failure, and what would you do differently? And clearly, because you've gone through the failure experience, you can speak truthfully about what you've actually learned and what you might have done differently, and that counts for a lot. And take it from me, starting today, if you quit your large company job and go start a company or work in a startup, 2 years from now, guaranteed, you will be far ahead in your capability than you would be if you stayed at your large company. That is a truism. There is no denying it. So think about where you want to be, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, and what your capabilities need to be. There is nothing that can teach you more than actually trying to take the risk and being in a startup or starting your own company.
Thanks, Anand.